to the Conquer Your Battlefield podcast, where we come together to discuss some of the more significant struggles and metaphorical battlefields that we've faced along our journeys and share some insight on how we've conquered them. I'm JD McGibney, and today I'll be chatting with one of the kindest people that I've ever met in my entire life, the extremely talented guitar slinger of the bands Orphaned and the Secret Saints, ever humble and always smiling, my Israeli brother from another mother, Mr. Chen Balbus. How you doing today, buddy?
Thank you very much for having me, brother. Thank you so much. I've been waiting for a long while to do this with you, and I'm glad you gave me that chance. So thank you for having me aboard.
Yeah, well, thank you. You're, like I said, one of my favorite people on the entire planet. So thank you for being here.
You are. Oceans away and still in love.
Exactly. See? Little hearts.
Oh, yeah.
Today,
or balls. Yeah.
or balls. They're upside down.
Yeah.
Today, we're going to be talking about stress management. For those who are not fully aware of what stress management is a wide spectrum of techniques and psychotherapies aimed at controlling a person's level of stress, especially chronic stress, usually for the purpose of and for the motivation of improving everyday functioning. According to the American Institute of Stress in a 2019 study, about 55% of Americans suffer from stress on a daily basis, and 83% of workers suffer from workplace stress. There is also a high correlation between stress and depression. With similar statistics spreading around the world, it is important for individuals to learn how to manage their stress in order to not feel overwhelmed. Developing stress-relieving habits such as regular exercise, meditation, and practicing mindfulness are some examples of how to conquer stress on a daily basis. Chen, you've had an active life from growing up and living in Israel, serving in the military, building a successful career in the entertainment industry, as well as having an eventful personal life. In your experiences, how do you feel that you regularly are able to handle stress on a daily basis? And do you feel that you've gotten better at managing it as time has gone on?
I'm glad you asked. I'll start from the last part of it. I do think I've gotten better throughout the years. It takes a lot of self-awareness of acknowledging I have this problem and this stresses me out. This makes me feel like that. And once you're very aware of that, it's easier, I think, to manage it, to write it down, to look at it and just figure out what are my options to make it a little bit better. And true as it is, I grew up in Israel, and Israel is obviously not the easiest environment in the world. Throughout wars, throughout the military, and just in general, the things I experience here are not something you'd call normal everywhere. But in a way, I think it helped me in kind of a way, the fact that I grew up living those things, due to the fact that this is normal for me. I'm not terrified, I'm not stressed by it as people would see it on the TV. It seems as something normal for me. That's how I grew up, to learn that nothing's happening. It's just fireworks, deadly ones, but fireworks. And yeah, that's a lot of that.
It's a very interesting thing that you're pointing out, is the fact that you grew up in a very tumultuous environment, that's been a very, for a lack of a better term, stressful place. Do you feel that you have become desensitized to a lot of things because of the fact that you were born and raised in Israel?
In a way I was, but I do feel some things. I don't feel like it consumes me anymore. I would say I would look at like videos of people suffering across the world and stuff like that, stuff that usually happens on TV, and people would go out and riot over it, and like I don't know what's the right word of the signs.
Protesting,
yeah, and stuff like that. for this thing and that thing. And I appreciate activists, but this is not usually the way to do it, and it doesn't usually change. So I look at it from a different perspective of a calm manner and more logical manner, how to actually solve problems.
Interesting.
So I consider stress and stress management a logical thing that you can robotically cure somehow.
So do you feel that's your perspective right now in this moment? Do you feel that you've always been that way, or do you feel like you've had to learn how to, uh, approach stress in that manner? Did you have this mentality when you were like, 10, 11, 12 years old, or is this something that's more recent?
I haven't. I'm till this very day. I experience different things. If you not just wars and like
Mhm.
global matters and
Yeah.
personal matters as well. Like I myself am a guy who's in a band and I perform in front of a lot of people, and I'm actually a shy kind of guy. But I remember myself, 15-year-old boy, and there was this school concert, and I really wanted to play, but I was always this fat, shy guy. And there was this moment of like to be or not to be, like, am I doing this or not? And I just switched that part in my head and I told myself, I want this more rather than being the stressful, shaky kind of guy. So, okay, you'll shake for a moment. No one will die from that.
That
So,
it's a very important thing that I think you're pointing out, and it's very just the way you're breaking it down. It's very similar to a technique called mindfulness. And just for like the people who are listening in or watching who aren't familiar with what mindfulness is, it's kind of just being aware, like self-aware in the moment of yourself and how you're feeling. And it kind of sounds like when you had like that moment when you were 15, you were very aware of how you felt, and you're like, oh, I feel this way, but like I really want this. And then you took the time to really think of everything and like work everything out. And you're like, well, if I go with how I'm feeling and kind of let that guide me, it's going to give me like a short term uh uh it's going to give me a short term resolution, whereas like the long term is I really want this thing because I know it's going to make me feel even better than just avoiding the awkward situation.
mhm. Yeah, I realized throughout the year, throughout a lot of situations where you just take it logically and consider what are my options when I'm in a stress matter and I'm in a situation where I don't feel well. What's the best option for me? Because I know usually considering also not just for myself, just as looking around the world about people I appreciate, people I think that are impressive with how they react to environment and how they respond and stuff like that. They are able to do that, and I keep trying to impose that on myself about what I maybe I myself can do that as well if they could. So that's my method when I'm just feeling like that,
Well,
and
that's
it becomes
what was that?
it became reality for
Oh,
me.
well, that's very impressive that you're able to like be so self-aware and like apply such a positive, uh, a positive tool into your daily life. But I think you're leading into another uh, topic that I think would be good to cover. And it's you were saying you look to like these other people that you looked up to, people that you respected, and you saw them doing this, and you're like, oh, I want to be able to do that. This way, I can move forward with my life. Do you feel that there has been times in your life where you've looked up the people that you've looked up to, like family members, icons, role models, that you've they've given you advice or they've talked to you, and you feel that you've had to like appease them in some way, that you felt that their opinion or their input, you know, added to some level of stress? Say, you wanted to do one thing, but like your role model is like, oh, maybe you should do this instead. Have you felt that in your life?
I I do actually. Till this very day, I'm 29, and I still feel that from my older brothers who
Oh,
consider me the little one, and my family who wants this kind of things for me.
mhm.
But I'm always trying to tell them, I respect what you're saying to me. I'm still gonna do what I need to do because that's how I'll feel well. But I'll consider what you just said to me. I'll consider. It might help, it might not. It is individual thing. So that's the way to approach it.
That's a very healthy way to approach it too, because it's also you're acknowledging the information they're giving, and you're acknowledging the respect that you have for them. But at the same time, you're letting them know in a very respectful way that you're setting a boundary. You're like, I will take this information, but I need to do ultimately what's best for myself. Um,
Yeah.
how do you feel? How do you feel that you're able to have that conversation? Because speaking from personal experience, that has been an issue that I've had where it's, you know, people that I've looked up to, family members, role models, whatnot. I've always felt, I felt that I did not want to disappoint them. So a lot of the decisions that I've made in the past have been, trying to appease them while trying to do what I wanted to do, but more often than not putting what I felt was best for me, on the sidelines and, doing all these other things for other people. So how is it that you, sir, um, have been able to establish that healthy boundary between yourself and these people?
Um, it is a very difficult one. I did not handle it very well years ago. There were many times where I just had fights and arguments over those things I was told about because I'm very aware of what I want, and I will fight for my principles no matter who it is. So it usually went there, but at some point I did not want it to go there. I did not want it to go this way. So I learned that you should sometimes embrace what they're saying, smile, and just do your own thing and let it go.
Interesting.
Because you'll always have different opinions, and those people are up for your best, but eventually it's you against the world, no matter what. In the end of the day, we're all going to sleep alone. Even with the loved one, we're all alone. And it's not a bad thing, but you need to know how to handle yourself with all those situations.
Yeah, because
So,
ultimately, like you're saying, it's like you have to live your life. Your best friend doesn't have to live your life for you, or like your mom and dad don't have to live your life for you. It's like you have to live your own life. So whatever they might feel is best for you isn't necessarily what you feel is best for yourself.
yeah, it's always the same situation. Your feeling is your own feeling, and only you can feel that. Your family can have, or whatever, anyone can have an impression of what you feel or may feel. Like, let's say, for example, if I had a talk with someone I care about, which he had a plan to make me have more money because he could see how I can have a lot of money and what I need to do. But I told him, I can see how it makes me more depressed. I see that you have a pattern, but I can see how it makes me more depressed. I'll think about it. I appreciate it. But yeah,
Yeah,
thank you.
that's a very good example of listening to the person, analyzing what it is that they're giving you, and then again setting a healthy boundary because what is healthy for you mentally and what's not healthy for you mentally, and just being able to like have that conversation and in a way that it was very healthy, it was very respectful, and it didn't end up in a verbal argument, which a lot of people tend to
Makes a huge
do. Yeah, setting healthy boundaries and not taking a conversation like that personally, where it's like someone's trying to give you what their advice. It's not that they're demeaning you, it's just that they're like, oh, I have some information I think you might find helpful, which is someone saying, hey, I care about you, I want to give you this, it might come in handy, as opposed to you're not worthy.
Mhm. There's also a vice versa to that thing. like let's say in my case, as the kind of person I am, am I with my friends? If I personally see a problem with my friends, I'll go straight at it and tell them right away, which also cause a few troubles for me, like with our relationships. Telling someone how to live their life, it causes problems because you don't always align the same, and eventually you got to understand that you might be pushing away that person from you just by trying to help. And sometimes letting go, usually always letting go, is the right way to handle things, but either vice versa or yeah.
Yeah, no, you have to be able to identify like healthy boundaries in conversations, and again, not take things, personally. I have a
Mhm.
question moving
Yeah.
on to
Yes.
different environments. Being a musician, being in entertainment in general is, it's difficult because a lot of times, especially if you're on the entertainment side, if you're in front of the camera, if you're on the stage, a lot of times, your job isn't, considered like normal. You don't have that 9 to 5 situation. You're not necessarily going into an office every day. You don't have to like do the business casual thing. Like, you're not reporting to a boss. You are your own boss. So that being
Mhm.
said, you're basically a private contractor. You're running your own business. How do you feel that you have dealt with the stressors that just naturally come along with being a small business owner, and on top of that, being in front of the camera, and then being someone who is pretty constantly in the public eye? How do you feel that you're able to balance those stresses and those triggers?
um I'm still figuring that one out, actually. I mean, it doesn't get any easier, but um, I learned along the way. I sometimes I really wish people taught me those things at school rather
Mhm.
than literature.
Like, what do
You'd
we
say.
need? What do we know? Why do we need the Pythagorean theorem? Just teach me how to not be stressed.
Yeah, I prefer to know how to handle finances and stuff like that instead.
That's another good point.
Yeah. So it took me a long while, and I was like let's say for years I was in a different kind of mood. But as I was younger, obviously things seemed like a dream come true. And the more you get older and your priorities change, and like right now you want to become a family man, and you want to find more income because the band is not enough right now because there's COVID.
Oh
So
yeah, that's a
as a
big thing too.
as a small business owner and like being shut down all of a sudden, it's you're not relaxed.
Yeah, dude,
You're not relaxed. You're constantly thinking about what am I going to do, and it takes a lot of time to snap out of it.
yeah, especially for you guys. You guys were, pretty regularly like touring and going out. And if I'm correct, that doing that was like a big source of like the band's revenue, the business's revenue. And, being shut down for a year and a half, 2 years, has some pretty heavy tolls on the finances, I can imagine.
Finances and personal feelings, how you want to continue doing that, if you want to continue doing that, considering the current situation.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's definitely very stressful. Do you feel that like the tools that you've learned, over time have been able to be applied, during the past like, year and a half, 2 years during COVID to keep you kind of grounded and able to kind of like look at things in a more rational like aspect, and not just be consumed by the emotional context of like, oh my God, what am I gonna do?
That's where I'm lucky. That's where I'm lucky. Ever since that 15-year-old concert, uh, things have been more rational rather than being emotional. It has been emotional, but it was contained very well. And when COVID happened, I considered it as a as a I don't know, like a complete stop to understand life, which was good for me. And it made me realize that I'm not a kid anymore, and I want other things in life right now,
Hmm.
which requires me to do other things. And I done the math. I studied what I needed to do to overcome that and become that person, and I I did.
Oh,
I mean,
fantastic.
it took a lot of time. And if you're referring more to the question how it applied,
Mhm.
I knew from the beginning, from a guy starting in a band when I was 17, knowing how hard it was to get to the point where I'm at today. I knew that beginnings that always stayed with me. I knew that beginnings take time.
Mhm.
It you just don't get what you want in a day unless you're extremely lucky.
Yeah.
It's usually not the case,
Unless you just
and you
happen
got
to
to be
win the
aware.
lottery.
Yeah, it's usually not the case, and you need to be aware of that. And once you're aware of that, you always fuel yourself when you're in that kind of stress of fuck, something is not happening. It's not happening today. I'm not earning money for like a
Mm.
month already, and nothing is happening. No one is approaching me for work.
Yeah, that's
And
a really good point that I think you're bringing up. Is sometimes like you know us as people sometimes get lost like in the heat of the moment, especially if we're feeling like extra emotional about something, or if we feel like there's like extra stress on us. It's like we have blinders on. It's really hard to see the bigger picture. So the fact that you're pointing out, it's like, okay, I'm aware that like I'm not going to see results immediately, or like because of where I am, it's hard to see, the long view, like the long, the end result for where I am. But like you just know for a fact, just from like past experiences and from just like learning outside from just like mentors and whatnot, that the certain steps lead to other, to certain steps. So you have to just continue with those things, and then you'll be able to, in the future, look back and be like, oh, I see where things have led, brings you to, where you want to be. But just being aware that it takes time to see results is a big thing.
yeah, yeah, everything takes time, no matter what you do, unless you're lucky, like they said.
Unless you're lucky and win the lottery, which
Uh,
speaking of, let's
when
go get some
shit ton
lottery
of
tickets.
money, it never works. I've been trying.
How do you
Hard.
how do you feel that your I guess how do you feel that your stress with being in a band, following the path less traveled, as they say, uh, relates to your personal relationships, say with like your family, like your parents, you said that your brothers, kind of sometimes, still treat you like, the baby, and that you kind of like, they approach you with that mentality. So how do you
Yeah.
feel that the I imagine there's stress involved with that kind of dynamic. How do you feel that you're able to deal with that on a regular basis, being that like one, you are the baby, and then two, you've kind of like gone into the entertainment industry, which sometimes people have misconceptions about, and then they apply that to you know those people. So how do you feel that you're able to deal with that on a daily basis?
I acknowledge that I have multiple personality. I'm not sure if personalities, but I'm not sure, but I have multiple ways to apply to every situation I'm at. I know that here I'm this guy, with this group I'm this guy, and it's okay. We all have like different mentalities with different people. That's how the way it should work. And you cannot always combine them. It is parts of who you are. It is. It's just who you're trying to build yourself. Like whenever you just throw yourself into an environment, you can be whoever you want to be, and that's what you control. And some of those situations, like let's say with family, you're thrown into that, and that shaped part of you.
You don't get to pick
So
your family. You're kind of just born into it.
yeah, you're born into that, and that it is what it is. But as for the rest of your life, you just choose who you want to be, and that's my case. I chose to be the different. Oh, I found a word. The different persona.
Ah, there you go.
I
That's really
chose the
important too. You know, you've mentioned it a couple of times in different settings. Is that the fact that you focus on the things that you have control over, as opposed to letting the things that you don't have any control over, lead your train of thought. So you focus on, like, I can control this. I can control how I behave. So I think that's a very important thing that you've mentioned multiple times.
yeah. If you take, like, let's say my family dynamics of how they consider me sometimes as the baby, and now coming as a experienced 29-year-old guy and telling my mom about finances and stuff like that, it's a little bit hard to tell a 70-year-old woman when she has her experience. She doesn't really follow that. She tries, but she has her experience. So the way to deal with such things is expect that you're like previous questions. You can't always change everything, but you can always change yourself and the way you approach it.
Yeah. And it seems, like, from all the examples that you've shared, so far, like, you're very, you make sure that you're very respectful of the person that you're having an interaction with. If they are giving you advice or they're having a conversation, you make sure to listen. And it sounds like you make sure that they know that you're paying attention, that you're listening. But at the same time, you're setting healthy boundaries in a healthy way when you're having those conversations. So it's a matter of listening, letting the person know that you're listening, but also making sure that they understand that you have things that you want to do, and not just taking things personally.
Yeah, or completely avoiding that.
Or completely avoiding them. It's like, nah, it's not going to pick up the phone for this
Yeah,
person.
when you just, I call it choosing your fights,
Yeah.
where you see that some sentences, and when you know who's in front of you, what will lead to where, and you just, okay, do I really want to go there? So I can keep that to myself. I went into a lot of fights in my life over things. I would say I could have just said nothing, and nothing would have changed. Everyone would go still separate ways.
Yeah. That's also, a good point you're making as well. Sometimes we just, it doesn't make sense just to, like, point something out. It's like, oh man, I really don't like how you arrange the books on your bookshelf. It's like, you know, is it going to change anyone's
Yeah,
life if you mention it? No, but that person might be like, oh, why do you care? And it might create tension where there doesn't need to be tension. So that's good advice. Pick your fights.
throwing a match into like, I don't know the phrase, but you get it.
Gasoline, bad idea.
Yeah, it doesn't work. I mean, they know it, you know it. No one needs to mention it.
Exactly. It's like, we could just continue life as is, and no one would care.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, thank you very much for taking the time to share some of your insight, Chen. And thank you for taking the time to chat today.
Thank you for having me once again. Here's that heart
Oh,
and the balls.
heart and the balls.
Heart and balls.
I truly
That
believe
was
that
fun. Thank
the more that we as a society feel comfortable opening up about our struggles, the more it will help others to realize that they are not alone. Everyone has the inner strength to face whatever life puts along their path. So thank you again for taking the time to chat, and thank you to everyone that has tuned in to this episode. If anyone watching finds that they are struggling with their mental health, please do not be afraid to reach out to your friends, family, or a mental health professional. I'll place a link in the description of this video. I will have some information and connections to further resources. And until next time, remember, you always have the strength to conquer your battlefield.